Okay, I call the town council meeting to order. We're starting just a little bit late, but the agenda's relatively short, so we should be okay this evening. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Pallavi?
Here.
Vice Mayor Klostad?
Here.
Mayor Zabriskie?
Here.
And I'll note Councilmember Romack and Henderson is absent this evening. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Now, would everyone stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, now's the time for any general comments for items that are not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council for up to 3 minutes each on anything they would like to share with us. Now, if anyone would like to make a public comment, could you come up to the podium?
Go ahead. No.
Yeah, don't be bashful. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Mike Levac. I'm from Truckee, and I copied the council on a letter that I sent to Mayor Zabriskie and to Supervisor Bullock last evening about homeless supportive housing. I participated in the homeless dialogue that was held Monday, February 24th to discuss the Tahoe Truckee Homeless Action Plan that the mayor and supervisor participated in drafting and which was released January 22nd, 2025. Several participants at that meeting had specific questions about how the concept of scattered site supportive housing might be implemented in Truckee, and we were told that detailed questions would be answered offline, but I never heard back. Many people in Truckee remain concerned about the prospect of Nevada County acquiring private homes in Truckee to provide scattered site supportive homeless housing, specifically for those with mental health and/or drug and alcohol addiction in residential neighborhoods without notice and without public process. I'd like to reiterate the request that I made to the mayor and to the supervisor on February 14th, that any proposal to conduct homeless treatment or housing in residential neighborhoods should be brought to the town council for public discussion, deliberation, and a vote by the council. Discussion should include the proposed location, the rationale for site selection, program elements, and analysis of how the resource requirements cited in the homeless plan will be marshaled to support the effort. It should include discussion of which agencies will be tasked with building inspection duties and ADA compliance to protect the rights and safety of the proposed residents. I was disappointed to read Supervisor Bullock's recent column in the Moonshine Inc. Caring community members are supportive of the homeless population and most of the efforts outlined in the homeless plan. Registering concern about the prospect of mentally ill, substance-dependent homeless people moving next door is not the same as lack of respect or empathy, and the effort to create this false equivalency is very disturbing. Ad hominem attacks upon those with different opinions is a dirty, embarrassing rhetorical approach, and it's not the Truckee way. Characterizing the failure of the Hope Ridge House in that article as a missed opportunity for compassion and understanding, and implying that those with different opinions lack an open heart and mind is not productive. For the record, I've been homeless and I've lived in a supportive homeless housing shelter, and I was very grateful for it. I took a homeless man into my home for 8 months so he didn't have to live in the forest. I've hired chronically homeless people and helped them to become housed. I served as an essential worker on the front line during the pandemic, serving homeless customers. I arranged for the memorial and funeral of my chronically homeless friend who died of COVID when his son and grandson could not. I have compassion and understanding for the homeless. That does not make putting homeless people with drug and alcohol dependencies and mental illness next door to us in our neighborhoods a good idea, and I hope that the council can facilitate further discussion about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levac. Any other comments?
Hi guys, JD here. Commenting on the same situation. In your emails, I've sent you all a property that just came available for sale if you look in your emails after the meeting, it just came up. It has over 6,000 square feet of mixed use. It's right behind Taco Bell. if the county's, it could house everything the county needed, from behavioral health to vocational to probation to parole to marriage counseling. It also has a second part to it that has a 7,235-foot mixed-use building attached to it. That is 3 stories as well, which could then be supportive housing. And it's in a more private area where those who are suffering from mental illness or addiction, they don't want to be gawked at. I don't want to be gawked at. I've been there like Mike, 37 years ago. I had nothing. I don't want to be looked at when I'm in that state. People don't want to be looked at. It's not a good time in your life. You need some privacy. And so I think it was a great idea that they canceled. I never stood up and said, hey, I'm opposed to this. I just said, I'm the whistleblower. We need help. I'm here for solution. I will tell you, though, that Supervisor Bullock is villainizing us in the media. I've held back at my radio station from bringing this to the air because I don't believe it. It was part of my product. I'll just give you a situation. I sat down at a restaurant in Tahoe City the other day for lunch, and they were talking along, and it came up about the Hope Ridge house. And before I could chime in, I'll just tell you some very special words were said about us, that those effing a-holes in Truckee are rotten. This is from businesses in Tahoe City talking about Truckee because of this situation. So I know that we have a big meeting coming up that's going to happen next Thursday night at 5 o'clock. I urge everybody to be at the rec center. You will hear about it on the radio station. The group, the Truckee Way, that stood up and you heard all their stories, they were the first ones there. The only thing that they were against was the scattered housing. They were there for the warming shelter that my wife and I proposed to put in and finance for the last 45 days of winter. All of them stepped up and said, I will help. These people want to help. They are compassionate. They're not villains. They're not rotten people. They're taxpayers in our community. They do good in our community. They work at our hospitals. They've worked their whole lives for their homes, and they understand people need help, and they want to help. So again, 5 o'clock, Thursday night, April 3rd, the rec center. You must come and speak your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, JD.
My name is Adrian Juncosa. I'm an environmental scientist and a Truckee resident for 29 years. I am speaking representing the Glenshire Devonshire Residents Association. For the last 16 years, I've done a lot of research on fire ecology and resistance of structures and neighborhoods to fire. This reinforces what fire scientists and agencies have written many times. Once they enter neighborhoods, the damaging California fires are urban fires. They are not wildfires. The majority of homes lost were ignited directly or indirectly by wind-blown embers, and the biggest source of dangerous embers in neighborhoods is other burning houses nearby. In short, home hardening is urgently needed. Owners are primarily responsible for that, but Truckee Fire and the town also have important responsibilities in that area. Town residents need much more from the town than just good evacuation planning, which we have. Without a realistic expectation that losses of homes in a fire will be minimal, there's no future for Truckee as we now know it. We urge the town to complete the following critical things within weeks or months. First, strengthen Article 3 of the Development Code considerably to cover fire-resistant construction and material storage and enforce it rigorously. Next, create and publicize incentives for specific home improvements, such as eliminating permit fees for fire resistance improvements. People respond strongly to sales. The rebates for green waste dumpsters were a huge success, and the building department should do something similar. Third, the town provides approved drawings for gas meter shelters, for one example, and should do the same for a short list of commonly recommended home hardening improvements, such as eave soffits, addition of non-combustible siding outside wooden and exterior walls, and others. Paradise now provides pre-approved design plans for immediate permitting. We can do something similar before Truckee has a damaging fire and loses many houses. Finally, Truckee is full of DIY homeowners and people in the building trades. Assigning building staff to do research on specific materials and designs and providing that information on the town website would help a lot to get residents to actually do these things. The property tax from saving just a few houses will easily compensate for that staff time. Please put everything else that doesn't have a legal deadline on hold until you've addressed the single biggest issue for the town's residents. Everyone in the community needs to treat this like the emergency that our governor thinks it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Juncoso. I will just echo what J.D. Haas said. The town and will be among those sponsoring a community workshop at the rec center at 5 o'clock next April 3rd. And we would like to see people attend so they can learn more and engage in one-on-one discussions with the other people there about the homelessness in our community. And I will be able to at least answer one of Mr. Levac's questions later, certainly within the next couple of days. And I don't know if any of the other council members.
No, just to clarify, the meeting starts at 5:30, JD. 5:30,
Okay,
yep.
thanks. Wondering. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda are presentations, and we're going to start with proclamation for child abuse awareness, and I'm wondering if Beatrice Schaffer can join me at the podium. What we'll do is I'll go ahead and read the proclamation.
Okay.
And then ask for you to make any comments you'd like.
Great.
And Beatrix is.
Beatrice.
Oh, okay, Beatrix is with the Tahoe Truckee Child Abuse Prevention Council. So whereas every child deserves to grow up in a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment, free from abuse and neglect, and whereas Child Abuse Prevention Month is recognized nationwide each April to raise awareness about the importance of strengthening families and protecting children from harm, and whereas the Tahoe Truckee Child Abuse Prevention Council serves as the primary planning and coordination group for child abuse prevention activities in the North Tahoe Truckee region, working with partner organizations to provide essential programs and services. And whereas through initiatives such as a mandated reporter training, parenting classes, and collaboration with local agency, the Tahoe Truckee Child Abuse Prevention Council empowers families, caregivers, and professionals with the tools and knowledge to prevent child abuse and support the well-being of children. And whereas the organization's outreach efforts include the placement of blue pinwheels throughout the community, educational workshops, and social media campaigns to help bring visibility for child protection and advocacy. And whereas the organization, along with its partners, has provided vital services directly benefiting hundreds of local families, such as training on shaken baby syndrome, prevention, cyber safety education for parents and professionals, and support for families with children with special needs. And whereas preventing child abuse requires the collective effort of individuals, families, schools, businesses, and community organizations to foster a culture of support, education, and intervention. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor, that's me, of the town of Truckee, that April 2025 is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the town encourages all residents to engage in activities that promote the safety and well-being of children, recognize the efforts of child advocacy organizations, and support policies that strengthen families and prevent child abuse. So it's my privilege to present this proclamation to Beatrix in honor of all that they have done and in honor of Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you. Thank you, Beatrix. And would you mind just saying a few words about your organization? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is the first time that we receive an acknowledgement like this one. I have been involved with the Child Abuse Prevention Councils for several years now, with several of my work colleagues here present, Kids Owned, Community Foundation, Sierra Community House, all together, along with other community partners, really make an effort to supporting our kiddos in our community to live in a safe, loving, and caring environment. So this takes a village, and I want to thank everyone who supports the council. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on the presentations is the Kids Zone. And Carol Meager, from the executive director, I believe, will make the presentation. Is that right, Carol?
That's correct. And Carol, the clicker is at the podium if you want to drive, or I can drive for you, whichever you prefer. Yeah, it's at the podium. Yes. And please just make sure your green light is on for the microphone. You should be good to go. We cannot. Green, if you push the red button.
Hello.
There we go.
Okay. Jen's here is my emotional support person. She's going to help me if I forget to say a few things. And I'm just going to put my timer on because I can talk too much. I was hoping that timer would be on, but that's okay. Excuse. I don't want that timer. Okay. So I'm Carol Maher. I'm the director for Kids Zone Museum in Truckee. We're a children's museum. And
I'm Jen Parker. I'm the philanthropy officer at the moment. I've had pretty much every position there, paid, non-paid. So that's what I'm doing now.
Jen was on our board for 5 years, and then before that, a volunteer, and I was a volunteer before that when my children were young. Okay, so we are, as you know, what we're doing, but I'm just going to do a little review about our project. This is our building project that we're going to have at Regional Park. That building is committed to a sustainable design principles that help teach the value of air, earth, and water inside and out. The design aims to meet the elevated sustainability standards of California Green Building Code. The new building will have tours and interpretive panels showcasing its sustainable features, including natural ventilation, energy sufficient installation, lighting, recycled materials, and clean air systems with low VOC materials, water-saving fixtures like low-flow faucets. Visitors will learn about drought-tolerant landscaping, rainwater collection systems, emphasizing their environmental benefits, similar to Lake Tahoe Environmental Center, you know, where they have amazing sustainability traits in their building with signage telling us what they do. Did I miss anything? I guess it's not on. So the reason that we need a new building is our current facility of 3,500 square feet is deteriorating. And we are also at capacity, at least, over 60 days a year. And sometimes our wait lines are, how long are they?
Yeah, we can have a wait list of 50 families or more during our busiest times, like holiday breaks and stuff like that.
So here's just a little visual about our visitation and the increases. And you can see that there's a little lull in between 2010 and 2020. And that's because we're at capacity so often that, you know, small children, they want to come and visit between the hours of morning until like noon. And so when all those families are waiting, they're not going to come later because they're napping. So we're not able to serve everyone. Besides that, we're so crowded we can't let as many buses come for schools as well as for our outreach groups and community partners. But you'll see in the new facility with more space that we are slated to grow quite a bit because we'll have the capacity and the space to serve more children and families, especially underserved families in our community. So what we provide for the community is public outreach to facilitate community cohesion. We have an outreach program. It's nationally recognized for its grassroots success, and we have 2 community advocates. They just make sure that underserved children and families are able to come to the museum free of charge. That includes children who have disabilities, low-income families. Who am I missing? Various families in the community served by some of our social service partners that use the museum for free. What we focus on at the museum is child development and inquiry skills because through play, that's the best way for a child's brain development to happen in the first 5 years. So how we engage families is through exhibits, interactive experiences, cultural events, science, music, and art. Oops. What the new, larger museum will offer our community of families is, and the community at large, economic boost. We already serve as an economic driver for the community. People stay longer here because the museum's here. A lot of times in the winter, part of the family goes skiing, and the rest comes to the museum where they take turns. In the future, it's estimated that that will increase 70% in dollars captured in our community just because the museum is here. In the new facility, we're going to be able to expand our audience. We're going to be very close to the senior housing area and senior center, which is very exciting to have cross-generational learning opportunities, as well as serving teens in our community with a teen studio, creative studio. Right now we have a teen board, which is great. About 30 kids participate, and this will be a much bigger opportunity for the teens in our community. All the programs that we've decided to have in the new facility are based on surveys we did, extensive surveys we did to different sectors of the community. We're also going to have a total section of the museum for older children, which will have like water play, collaborative build, traveling exhibits that we get from partners in the museum industry, such as dinosaur exhibits, etc. A teen studio that I was talking about before, and a teaching kitchen. We're also going to have a sensory space. You're the expert about this. You want to talk about with us?
Yeah, so this is something that we do not have at all at the current museum because we don't have the space. This will be an area for all families and children, but it will be particularly beneficial for those kids that have a little trouble with their sensory integration, basically taking in all those things from their senses and making sense of the world. This will create an environment that sort of helps them reach that, you know, where it's not overwhelming for them when they're like maybe out in the regular museum. So there'll be lots of, you know, everything has to do with senses. Things that different textures, that swing is really good for their vestibular system, which is knowing kind of where they are in space. You know, the bubble tubes can be very calming for kids with autism. So it's a space for any family or child that needs a little bit of time out, but it'll focus a lot on those kids that need a little bit of help with their sensory development.
And what's great about this is providers can use this space as well for their clients who have sensory development delays. New is the STEAM STEAM Center. Very excited about that, to have an array of science and art. It will focus our longstanding partners like the Exploratorium and OMSI. They'll provide us with hands-on exhibits in the play area. But our other partners like the Shane McConkey Foundation and the Headwaters Institute, they'll help us bring quality learning such as exploring biomimicry. Like they could use a mismatch of materials in the STEAM Center to create, like figure out how to design a flying objects inspired by birds' wings and feathers. And this is all in a space where there are no mistakes, just experiments. This is the Great Outdoors. We do have a small outdoor area, and the Great Outdoors will be an area of play, laughter, and where children can experiment with water and sand. It'll have an outdoor classroom where kids can explore science, and also our camps, where we have watershed camp, farm camp, and entomology camp. They'll learn about energy, water, conservation, while discovering how climate change affects the forests, and in the natural exhibit of our local forest at Regional Park. And again, we have a play floor. This will allow us to have more people, and it'll be an expanded version. We have a play structure indoors now, and we'll have a great play structure at the new facility. And the reason that occurred is because way back when the school district did a study for children entering kindergarten, and they were achieving below average in gross motor development. So both Placer and Nevada County First Five supported the move to where we are, the location we're at now, the tent, to house an indoor play structure. Okay, so the plan. So we have decided to build in 2 phases. The reason for that is so that we can expedite our chance of building quicker, avoid cost escalations, which have been happening every year. Our fundraising is chasing those escalations in costs. We can open sooner and manage our fundraising. Phase 1 is $9 million, and then phase 2 will be $3 million at the moment. It depends on when we start phase 2. So you can see, you want to point, will you point and I'll talk? There's the phase 1 is, we'll have the STEAM Center will be in phase 1, the Sunrise Spot, which is a sensory development, the toddler saplings area, similar to what we have now, the climber, the restrooms, and some flexible space. Phase 2, okay, sorry about that. And then, sorry, I just got phase 2 will have the exhibits that are traveling exhibits. It will also have an art room specifically for young children, because in the phase 1 they'll just use the STEAM Center. But a lot of parents and families have said, please, we don't want them to get run over by older children. We still have that concern now, but we have a smaller space. So we're having the art room specifically for children under 5. So our progress is great. You're probably familiar maybe with our progress. The town has been amazing helping us through this. We have gotten our development permit. Our next steps, we applied for a building permit, I think this week. And then the next step we haven't done yet is breaking ground. So we've raised $6 million, 67% of our goal of $9 million. Ooh, I'm way over, and thank you. Do I ask for questions?
What we'll do is we'll take questions when we finish the mayor's presentation. So don't go far.
Okay.
But for now, thank you, Ms. Mayor. And so now we will turn to the manager's report. Just before we do, I meant to mention at the outset, we've continued one of the items on the agenda. That was the bond measure for the new library. That's going to be heard April 8th. So for any of you who are here for that, we're not going to, it's not on the agenda for tonight, it's on for April 8th. Okay, now the town manager.
Great, thank you. New seat tonight. On that note with the library, for everybody that submitted public comment, thank you for doing that. We'll repackage that and provide it for the 8th as well, so you don't need to resubmit if you've already done that. We'll share that with the council, although I think they've probably already read the majority of those already, but just as an FYI. And JD mentioned this, but to reiterate, we will have a community engagement event for the Homeless Advisory Action Plan. That's next Thursday, April 3rd, 5:30 to 7:30 at the Steve Randall Rec Center. There'll be a short presentation on what the action plan is, and then some interactive tabling to have one-on-one time and questions. So if you want to learn more and provide some feedback in advance of when the council hears that item, this is your opportunity to do that. We'll probably be following up with a survey after as well. So if you can't participate, there'll be a survey portion that you can complete. And then because we do have a little bit of a shorter agenda tonight, I'm going to ask for a little bit of extra time. We had a really successful event this week celebrating women in law enforcement. We had a number of our partner agencies came out to celebrate women taking on policing and law enforcement. We have a great video to share from that event with some interviews of why some of our female professionals chose to get into that field. So I think I'll share that with the council and the community.
My name is Lisa Madden. I'm a lieutenant with the Truckee Police Department. We have a lot of agencies regionally that are coming together to celebrate this special event of women in policing.
I love my job because it's different every day. It gives you a sense of fluidity on what you get to do for the day. Everything's different. You're not stuck at a desk.
The reason I love my job, I love working for the sheriff's office. I like having a mobile office, essentially, being able to drive around, interact with members of the community, and be out and about in nature. We have such a beautiful place that we live, and I am fortunate enough to live there and work in Nevada County. It's just beautiful, and the people are amazing.
I love my job because I get to work with people every single day, and I get to learn all kinds of new things every day. It's always moving, and there's different parts going. It's not monotonous. Right now, in my current capacity, I'm a patrol sergeant, and I get to work with a team of young staff that are out there every day serving our citizens. And they just enjoy it so much, and they get to tell me about all the people. So I'm not just serving the community myself, I have a whole team that's doing it, and I get to hear about their experiences. It's great.
I love my job because I can go out there and I can contact the community. I'm there to help the public. I can make a difference in people's lives.
When I first got into law enforcement, it was to make a change in the community and keeping people safe. And over the years, I've realized what an impact that just me alone has as an officer, the impact and the change that you can have on one person's life. And so, that's why I love the job. It's just how much impact you can have on one person.
My job is so diverse. So every day is different. I get to work outside, which is fantastic. I don't like working inside. I get to work with just everybody that lives in Nevada County, whether they're living here, working here, playing here. And helping people on potentially the worst day of their lives.
I got into law enforcement because I wanted to do something that was meaningful. I wanted something where I felt like I had purpose. And what better way to do that than serve the members of my community and the community that I grew up in, the community that I love.
I've always had the interest in being a first responder, and I actually didn't realize I was going to be with CHP. I went to an open house at a California Highway Patrol office, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work here someday. And sure enough, I got an opening or got a job position with the office assistant, and we had to go on a ride along. So when I went on my ride along, I sat with the officer in the car, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. This is what I need to do. And he was like, well, why can't you do it? And I said, well, I'm a mom and I got kids and I'm a female, like we can't do that stuff. He's like, sure you can. And after that, I just decided, I was like, well, I'm gonna try to do a push-up. I did my first push-up and it was just game over from there. And I just knew this was my calling.
The motivation really was just to, deal with people in crisis and kind of be there for them when they need you. My dad was actually a sergeant for the Placer County Sheriff's Office, and so I grew up in a very service-oriented household. And as part of that, I wanted to be in the military, and I did that. And then I got into law enforcement, and I haven't looked back. It's been great. My father served,
So it is something that I grew up with in watching my dad serve in Nevada County.
It's rewarding every day when you deal with a very traumatic situation that someone is going through and you're there for them and you're that sense of support. It's great. It's rewarding in that sense. It's extremely exciting. There's a team dynamic with everyone you work with, and it really gives you a sense of community. I'm proud to serve my community. Like I said, it's the community that I grew up in. I love it, and it makes me feel good that I can be out in the community that I grew up in and try to make a difference and help others on their worst day. Unfortunately, we do contact a lot of people on their worst days, and just trying to be a little bit of light in that moment for those people is what really drives me.
I'm proud to serve because for me, I can make a difference in the community. Whether it's one person at a time or an entire community, I'm in control of myself. And not only do I represent me, but I represent the Highway Patrol, and I also represent all law enforcement.
I am proud to serve because the citizens that we work for in this community are absolutely amazing. They are so supportful to our agency, and every day, like, they thank us, they stop us and say, man, we couldn't be here without you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for keeping us safe.
The Nevada County Sheriff's Office is just an incredible organization. I mean, our sheriff is super supportive of women in law enforcement. She's incredible. Our entire administrative staff is amazing. The people that I work with on patrol are extremely supportive, and it's just a great organization, a great department.
It's a special camaraderie between officers. It's even to a different level with the female deputy sheriffs and police officers that we have in our community, because it is such a difficult job. And to see how many women are really doing such a great job in Nevada County, it's an honor to serve with them.
I would tell a young woman who's interested in law enforcement to go for it. If it's something that you're interested in, don't let anything stop you. Don't let anyone who tells you otherwise to prevent you from pursuing it. Do it. You won't regret it, and you'll have fun.
You know, it's not an easy job, but there are a ton of women here that are doing a great job every single day, and they're so intelligent, and they bring just a different aspect to law enforcement.
I would tell a young woman who wanted to be in law enforcement to just keep going. Don't listen to the naysayers. Don't let the negatives bring you down. You have to be strong, be disciplined, prove yourself, and just shine.
I tell the little girls in the community, you can be a police officer. I've done it, you can do it, and we're leading the path for you, so just continue on.
Anyone who's trying to get into law enforcement, I always recommend it. It's a hard job, so you have to prepare yourself mentally and physically, but if you want it, it's absolutely worth it.
You know, you have to have confidence in yourself, and sometimes that you have to learn how to be confident in yourself on whether it's a call for service and you're the only one there and you're making those really difficult split-second decisions, but the compassion that you have in your life, the empathy, the ability to be patient and really truly help people. Female deputy sheriffs and police officers make huge impacts in our community for the safety of everybody.
This is a special place. Like I said, the community is amazing, supportive. We really try to focus on community engagement and how we can interact more with the community, know what they want and what they need, and our officers every day go out there and serve. And to me personally, it's just great to see, interacting with little girls who come up to me and say, I didn't know girls could be police officers, or I want to be a police officer. It's really just a special moment where you can mentor, our younger generation.
So special thanks to Mountain Brew for hosting that incredibly powerful group of people. It was a full house there, and it was just great to see everybody interacting. And these are the great people that are protecting our region and our communities. So if you see them, say thanks. If anybody's out there thinking of a career in law enforcement, do your first push-up and see how that feels, and then give one of the agencies a call. So with that, that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Jen. And now we'll have an opportunity for council questions followed by any public comments. Do you have any questions or comments? Dave?
No questions, but that was a really remarkable video. Great job. Thank you. Yeah.
Are there any public comments on the presentations?
I should just say thanks to Court Levy who produced that.
Hello again, I'm Beatrice Schaefer, and I think I find myself in the perfect place at the perfect time supporting Kids Zone. I cannot tell you the many years Kids Zone has impacted many, many children in our community. As a mother, I've been touched by Kids Zone and my kiddos at a young age, and as a coordinator for the council, I cannot tell you what a difference it makes to be able to have opportunities like Kids Zone does, so I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer.
Hi, I'm Susan Duffy Smith. I'm the program manager for Healthy Babies Home Visiting Program, serving prenatal and early parenting in this community and the entire Nevada County region and Sierra County as well. And I'm here in support also of Kids Zone, who is a very supportive partner for our families. We are able to use their facilities to do home visits on occasion, to do group socializations, which support mental health and development for children. And my children have benefited years ago from the very start of Kids Zone, as have so many families in this community. And in the wintertime, when there is no space to play and no space to do things, Kids Zone is a lifesaver for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. We'll take it out of turn.
Okay. Carol, would you mind? Thank you so much for the presentation. And I understand you have $3 million left to raise.
Yes.
What is your expected date that you need to raise that by?
So I have to say it's hard as a nonprofit with no assets, physical assets. No, we don't own the land. Mm-hmm. So we are working with Parks and Rec and some lenders so that we're working with the rural community agency who gives rural loans to nonprofits who are in rural areas at a very low interest rate. So basically, if we're lucky and we can get a loan qualify for the loan before July 1st, then we can break ground this summer. Okay. But right now we do have a goal to reach $1 million by May, and I think we raised $1.5 million this year, but in addition to that, we need to raise another $1 million by May. That will help us so much qualify for that loan, and so that we can start building.
So here's your opportunity. What are you doing for fundraising, and how can people help?
Okay. Well, actually, at the moment, we haven't done a public campaign. We've only done what they call the silent part of the campaign, because it's so expensive. So we've been targeting our donors that have wealth to help us with the major contributions, so we could make sure that actually we could do the project. And now we're kind of like this. We're always in this transition, because first the building was $8 million, and then it went up to like $13 million. So we switched to a metal building. So then it went down to $10 million, and then it went up again because of escalation. So then we had to do in phases. So it's like every year has been a struggle. So that's one reason we have to get it done. How people can donate is, I would love to talk to people about the project. So would Jen and our campaign committee.
What's the best way to reach you?
At the Kids Zone. You could call the Kids Zone and get my information.
Okay. General number to the Kids Zone is?
Okay, my number is, I'm available for dinner. My phone number is 530-320-5613.
Okay.
And I have to say, Parks and Rec has been an amazing partner for us in helping us all the O along the way. And we can't wait to be in regional park serving more children. It will only take 18 months because it's a metal building that comes pre-designed.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. And we have been asking the various municipalities for support, public agencies.
Thank you for sharing that with the community. Anybody who hasn't been to the Kids Zone, even if you're an adult, you should go because it's really fun. I've spent quite a bit of time there. I've been a supporter of the Kids Zone ever since that tent popped up on school district property. And I really hope our community can come together to make this happen.
Me too. As soon as we, Stephanie at the Humane Society is like our mentor because she's really the only nonprofit capital campaign that's happened, to my knowledge, in Truckee. And so she tells us everything about the fundraising. It's been amazing. And I forget what I was going to say about that.
Well, thank you very much.
Darn it. Anyway.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Now we'll close public comment on the presentations and move on to the consent calendar. These are 7 items tonight that are considered non-controversial unless someone wants to pull them for regular discussion and public comment. We'll go ahead with them. So I'll read the list through and then we'll see if anyone wants to pull them. 6.1 is the minutes of the last meeting. That was March 11th. 6.2 is the Nevada County 2025 Community Wildfire Protection Plan. 6.3 is the purchase authority with Colatuano, Highsmith, and Watley PC. 6.4 authorize the settlement and payment release of a damage claim. 6.5 is Church Street and Truckee Way Roundabout Public Art Project Contingency. 6.6 West River Streetscape Project Regional Surface Transportation Program Funds Allocation Request. And then 6.7 is the resolution of intent to renew the Truckee Tourism Business Improvement District. Does anyone on the council wish to pull any items? Does anyone among staff wish to pull an item?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to pull an item? If so, can you approach the podium? Seeing no one, do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I'll move.
And second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to the discussion items. There are 3 of those this evening. And we'll have a public hearing on each of those 3. The first one is the River Revitalization Catalyst Project Memorandums of Understanding, amended to update the MOUs. And Carissa Binkley, the head of our staff on this project, will do the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here to discuss, as the Mayor explained, the River Revitalization Catalyst projects and present the MOUs for our 2 project sites tonight. Just some context of where we are heading. Tonight we are seeking authorization to move forward with the MOUs for the Catalyst projects for 10555 West River Street and 10603 East River Street. We are also requesting direction to expand the visioning exercise for 10603 East River Street. And just some background for those who may not be familiar, the River Revitalization Steering Committee, also known as R2SC, is a diverse group of community members. They've been meeting monthly since July 2023 to work toward revitalization of our river corridor, as well as East and West River Streets. River revitalization itself, those efforts are a direct output of the 2040 General Plan. As you can see here, the vision for the future of our community includes a connected, revitalized, and accessible Truckee River. There are 3 interconnected themes about what revitalization means to R2SC, and through community outreach as well as our meetings. The steering committee has developed 3 interconnected themes for envisioning the future of the river corridor: restore, revive, reimagine. Restore relates to river health and access. The goal is to have a thriving ecosystem, including protected water quality, restored riparian zones and habitats for wildlife and fish, abundance of native plants, species, and appropriate recreation access. Revive is associated with community vitality and connectivity. It envisions a connected, eclectic mix of thriving local businesses and housing with a mixed use of commercial, residential, light industrial, open space, public places, sidewalks, and bike paths. And Reimagine is all about what it feels and looks like in the river corridor, the vibe and character of the place, the desires to have an authentic, attractive place that honors Truckee's history, a mix of modern and historic, natural and built, a love of place, and a respect for Truckee funk. Sorry about that. And so to facilitate our focused efforts, as I said, the R2SC is a diverse, large group, 18 community members. And out of R2SC, we established 2 action teams, the Community Economic Vitality Action Team, as well as the River Health and Access Action Team. CALIS projects were out of the Community Economic Vitality Action Team. We've started calling it CVAT. So recognizing the challenges and varying levels of interest among property owners, it became clear that there was no panacea, there was no one thing that could happen to make change happen along East and West River Street. So the Community Economic Vitality Action Team recommended prioritizing CALIS projects. These projects not only will revitalize the specific sites, but also will drive broader revitalization and help us understand and overcome barriers for the entire corridor. And so our project timeline, as you can see here, it was very quick. To use a term that came out of our CVAT, it was non-governmenty. So it was a very quick process. We worked toward the CALIS projects. And these are the selected CALIS projects that Town Council approved, each with unique opportunities for revitalization. There on the screen are listed around the 2 CALIS projects that we are discussing tonight. And for context, you can see here the parcel and existing building at the Tanner Family Trust parcel on the east end of East River Street. And this is the parcel and existing buildings on the Truckee River Partners parcel on West River Street. So our collaboration agreements, which are MOUs, we stated in the RFI for the CALIS project when we originally started this process that they will memorialize mutual commitments, specify deliverables, and specify town resources, which they do. The property owners met with town staff, R2SC member liaisons, and Design Workshop, which is our consultant on this project, to come to a mutually agreeable collaboration agreement. I will also point out the R2SC assigned member liaison. So each of these CALIS projects has a R2SC member liaison acting as a non-interested third party present at every meeting around the CALIS projects. So collaboration agreements include deliverables that each partnership will work toward. They specify consultant costs and staff time, and a not to exceed amount for flexibility. The intention was to allow the flexibility while these CALIS projects are occurring to pivot without having to necessarily come back to Town Council or revisit our agreement. So the collaboration agreements not to exceed amounts for East River Street, the Tanner Family Trust parcel, we are recommending $75,000 in consultant costs, roughly 337 hours, depending which consultant is working on the project specifically, 40 CDD staff hours, that's our community development department, and 100 economic vitality staff hours. The project on West River Street, the Truckee River Partners parcel, $50,000 in consultant costs is recommended, 30 community development department staff hours, and 75 economic vitality staff hours. I will note that the economic vitality staff hours for the Truckee River Partners LLC was mistakenly omitted from the presented MOU, and that will be added in the amount above before execution, pending any changes from our council. So adjacent parcels, we recognize the importance of considering adjacent parcels as we were going through the process with both of these property owners. They have very different projects, yet they both had a theme come out where the adjacent parcels were something that was going to impact the success of their projects. So the MOUs allow for this, especially for 10603 East River Street, the Tanner family parcel, where we propose expanding the visioning exercise to include up to 5 of the adjacent property owners. And next steps, these are next steps including finalizing the agreement for the third approved CALIS project, 10331 West River Street, as well as working with property owners to achieve the MOU deliverables themselves. We have details here about the fiscal impact, including our consultant costs and staff time. Sufficient funding is allocated in the current and upcoming fiscal year budgets. And again, the funding is already allocated in the current and upcoming fiscal year budgets here. So in conclusion, we respectfully request that the council authorize the town manager to execute the MOUs and direct staff to expand the visioning exercise as outlined.
Thank you, Carissa. Councilmember Pallavi, do you have any questions for staff?
I think I know the answer, but it'd be great to hear it regardless. Just the differences for the different dollar amounts and staff hours and labor is just due to the different stages that each project's at primarily?
Absolutely. If you recall, when we came to council with the recommended CALIS projects, each of our CALIS projects are in completely different phases. We have one that's ready to be submitted practically to planning. We have one that is a blank slate where we are going to do a ton of visioning. And we have one that has a concept in mind that we're going to help to bring to fruition. So the amount of time needed will differ for each project.
And to Jen, how will adoption of these MOUs affect the work plan moving forward more broadly?
Yeah, the great thing about the specificity of the MOUs and the direction that you provided when this was talked about before is we have a very defined amount of time we're committing. So we're building that into the work plan development as part of the work that Chris is going to do, CDD. So when you see the work plan, it'll include that. But obviously there's trade-offs, right? So we're committing a certain amount of staff time that won't go to something else.
But we don't yet know what that is? Is that
What
the
the
answer?
something else is?
Right.
Not at the moment.
Right. Got it. Yeah. I think those were all my questions. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah. Similar to the timeline questions, I mean, I understand the amount of time that's being committed to, but the overall expectation, I didn't see, at least in my review, of whether or not we have any hard deadlines on any of these MOUs for milestones or progression or ultimate conclusion.
We did not choose to include those at this point just because of the flexibility, and regarding at least these two projects, it was evident that there will need flexibility needed as we move forward. We did try to include the pieces of what deliverables we'll be working towards so that it is clear if we're making progress. And that's the other piece of why we're making sure to include an R2SC member liaison in each of these as someone neutral, third party who can look at, is the town not making progress? Is it the property owner? Do we need to do something different to change our communication, to move progress forward? And so that was another piece.
Okay. So I imagine we'll see this show up on the work plan as ultimately it'll be 3 separate tasks, right? One for each of the Catalyst sites.
Yes.
And then on the quarterly updates, we'll see that progression or lack of progression as the case may be.
That's correct. And the intention is to bring back updates to R2SC as a whole as well. You know, we don't have a set frequency of when that will happen, but as we're making progress and R2SC is meeting, and we can bring those, we'll be specific with those updates in the work plan updates. So if you have questions, you would have the opportunity to ask those
at that time. Okay. And what about the expectation of daylighting these concepts to the community and the council? What's the expectation there?
I think there's going to be some natural points where it's going to make sense. I mean, it'd be really clear to come back to council. We do intend to do some pretty broad communication with the community once these agreements are signed. Some community spotlights with KTKE. We'll work towards some videos to put out on social and our YouTube channels in partnership with the property owners in terms of either what their vision currently is. We don't have a vision. We're working on that together. There's opportunity. And then there'll be some specific engagement events that we'll work through and talk with the property owners about in order to engage their neighbors and the broader community. So that's all kind of part of this process in defining what is the best communication for each site as they move forward.
So is part of that communication strategy included in the number of hours that we're talking about here?
Yes.
Because that seemed pretty specific to the community development department, but we'll be utilizing Braun or other resources as needed.
Yeah, so there's community development staff and economic vitality staff, which is Carissa and Hillary. Braun and I are just add-ons, but really our, like Braun's role will be to help coordinate scheduling with court to do the videos. And then typically what would happen is Carissa, Hillary, and I will work on talking points to provide to court, so he knows the layout of the video. To the radio, we'll work with the property owners on that. So there should be limited time outside of Carissa, Hillary, and CDD.
Okay. Well, that's a nice benefit to these, is having some community understanding of what's going on, so they will know about those opportunities. Okay, thank you.
So I understand on that financing, it's $125,000 for the two catalyst projects that are before us tonight. In the answers to questions, there was a reference to, was it an additional 50,000, or is that?
That was intended to refer to the continuation with our consultant of moderating and planning for our 2SC meetings themselves.
Is that on top of the 125? Then?
Yes, the 125 is just for these two catalyst projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions. So,
I guess that brings up one other quick question,
go ahead.
which is we haven't seen a potential third MOU yet, but now we're exceeding budget, basically, right? So at least the anticipated budget, this is going to add that 50,000 to our existing CIP or whatever, however we've categorized this. So how much? I guess. Did you guys come into this with a capacity or a number, and you were working backwards from that? As in, was there a total number, or did you enter into this more from here's what needs to get done, and then add budget and staff hours to that? I guess, because what I feel like we're depending on how you answer that, obviously impacts work plan, impacts budgeting, and it also is going to impact the third catalyst project, because if we had one bucket and now our bucket is empty and we don't have resources left, then were we being equitable in this process?
It's a good question. We have made some progress with the third catalyst site as well. So we had an initial meeting. We have a pretty good idea of what their MOU would look like. We're finalizing details on the sale and purchase agreement for the land to bring back to you first. But their project is quite a ways down the path. And so their expected cost asks are very limited, if any, other than staff time at this point. So we're not expecting to increase the design workshop contract for that project. We did not come into this with a set dollar amount because we wanted to be pretty open-minded as to what each catalyst site would need. But we did scale back what we thought seemed like a reasonable amount to move these forward to a certain degree where there would be better sense of what's going to happen at each site, and the property owner had enough to really move forward from there. If something happens and we needed more, we could come back to you, but we wanted to keep it in a reasonable amount as we get started.
Thank you.
While we're talking about the catalyst projects, Chris, could you just briefly address the projects that were not selected that are going to be assisted by non-staff members of the action teams?
Absolutely. And just for context, for those who aren't quite up to speed, we had several applicants for our catalyst projects, and 3 of them ended up being selected, which was the original intention. And those who applied who were not selected, our action team members have volunteered their personal time to help those applicants with whatever we learned about from their project through the application process. Sometimes they were things that it felt like it could be a pretty easy lift to get them really far along. And so we had an action team meeting last night, actually, where volunteers were assigned to each of our projects, and they're going to, outside of staff time, outside of consultant time, work to help those projects, which will be another lift to the revitalization of this entire corridor.
So these are entirely volunteers. They're not being compensated in any way for their volunteer efforts.
And for context, for vocabulary purposes, we're calling those mini catalysts because they don't cost anything for town staff dollars. Staff time isn't being used on them, consultant time isn't being used on them. But it was something that our volunteers felt so strongly that these projects are worthwhile as well.
Okay, thank you, Carissa. And now it's time for any public comments. If you step up to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Joan Jones. I chair the River R2SC committee, and I just want to thank you very much for considering this tonight and for being willing to embrace a different way of moving a plan forward. It's a very ungovernmenty way, but I think we've tried the reverse. We've tried building a beautiful plan that really just sat on a shelf. I think going at it a different way and embracing the actual work, getting some work done to form catalysts is really innovative, and I really give you guys a lot of credit for being willing to look at it in a new way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
My name's Jan Holen, and I'm one of the Truckee River Partners. We have about 7 local family members, local families that are investors in the property. And something that people may not know is that, over the 7 years, we've invested collectively about $5 million, and that's actually from about a group of 20 families. And we, in addition to investing perhaps thousands of hours, well, certainly thousands of hours of our own time. We spent about $500,000 going through what we would consider the industrial consultant complex, and it's this process of going back and forth with town. And I would say that more so than other developers I've talked to, I'm always defending town staff because I just know that, I know a lot of these folks personally, or most of them personally, and they're really amazing, and they're trying to do their best work. However, the way that it's structured, it often doesn't allow them to do anything other than really check boxes and hand it back to you and say, sorry, you didn't check all the boxes. And I would say that even though we've at this point spent only a handful of staff hours in the first couple of meetings that we've had, formal meetings we've had with staff, and a bunch of phone calls to Carissa and other members of the team, I feel like in some ways we've daylighted some of our issues that we've had our barriers to redevelopment in. In 2 meetings, we've gotten further, I think, in some level than we did in, say, 3 or 4 years of consistent effort and $500,000 spent. So I hope you support this. I think at this point you've been supporting it. I think it's going to get us to a place where we've been quite gun shy about spending more money. I know our consultants are like, I'm always like, hey, great idea, but let's see this process play out, and I think it's going to bear fruit. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Good evening, Council. I'm Mark Tanner. I'm a representative for the Tanner Family Trust this evening, one of the Catalyst sites you'll be entertaining on. First, I just want to say thank you very much for the consideration, and we appreciate everyone from staff, the River Revitalization Committee, and public citizens that we've worked with to date. And this is step 1 of a lot of work to come forward with. So thank you very much for the consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, is there any follow-up questioning? No. Okay, then we'll go on into deliberation, starting with Vice Mayor Klostad.
Well, I'm ecstatic about this, getting to this phase already. I cannot believe the lightning speed that the R2SC committee has moved. The energy from this group is just amazing. Even the 2 hours that I spent listening to all of the presentations in the before the first one, I could just see the enthusiasm and excitement from everybody on this, and I am thrilled. I'm really thrilled that we can unlayer the bureaucracy and create these interactive and productive relationships, and I really hope that we can continue to carry them forward. I'm in full support.
Thank you. Councilmember Pallavi.
Yeah, I echo what the vice mayor said. I think it's really cool. It's exciting. The speed of which you are all working has never been seen before in my 6 years on council, other than some other agenda items that seem to keep creeping back in. But you know, progress has never happened so quickly. So I think that's a testament to the energy that you're all putting in. Really appreciate that. You know, and I'll just comment quickly, you know, just reading through this agenda item and seeing 2 MOUs like this was also just really unique and kind of exciting. And, you know, from our perspective, really somewhat nerve wracking because, you know, we've never seen anything quite like this, you know, come across some of the decisions that we have to make. So I think a really cool first step, very innovative, and yeah, I wish you all good luck, and hopefully you'll be back with us in 3 months or so with, you know, you've already finished this contract and you're ready for applications in phase 2 and moving everything forward. So yeah, supportive as well.
Yes.
Mayor, one more thing.
Yes.
Well, of course, I want to thank the property owners too of trusting in this process. I know it's not easy, and I just really want to point that out, that how much that means to me as a council member, that we have property owners that are willing to take this leap of faith with us. And then staff, like, yeah, developing these MOUs in this short period of time, I'm so impressed. I can't believe how quickly all this is happening. So I want to give you guys credit for this as well.
I'll echo my council members. The Catalyst project represented a fork in the road. We could have gone with trying to develop a master plan for all of West River and East River and could be talking about much larger sums of money tonight for a large multi-volume document that would end up on a shelf. And instead, we opted for what is in effect an incremental approach that targets the sites that the committee felt are most likely to succeed. We're dealing with a much smaller sum of money, and we appear to be, right now, it looks like we're in good shape and should be moving forward. So do I have a motion?
So I move that we authorize the town manager to execute the Catalyst project MOUs, memorializing the town and property owners' collaborative effort to advance river corridor redevelopment with Truckee River Partners, LLC at 10855 West River Street and the Tanner Family Trust at 10603 East River Street, and direct staff to expand the selected Catalyst site of 10603 East River Street to include up to 5 neighboring parcels within the visioning exercise deliverable and work towards MOUs with each interested partner, parcel owner, memorializing their inclusion. And that too is amazing. 5 additional parcels.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I would echo Vice Mayor's comments on property owners. Good job to both of you. Thank you. And I'll second that. It's easy when there's
all those
nobody
in favor?
else here. Yeah. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Just us.
And Mayor, just thank you to the committee members that continue to volunteer and are offering their expertise to support the mini catalysts. We've got a dollar value in time, but they're giving, a lot of their time, and it's really elevating the amount of effort going into this to move it forward. So thank you.
Yeah. I think, town manager speaks for the council on this, so we appreciate it. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Public Arts Commission, and Becky will lead us on that discussion.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Becky Bucar. I'm Assistant Public Works Director, and I'm joined by Nola Mitchell, who is Associate Engineer. And we, along with Sarah Ring, are the primary staff members that work with the Art Commission. So we're here tonight to present a little bit about the proposed 2025-2026/2026-2027 fiscal year Public Art Commission work plan. Just a little bit of background. The Public Art Master Plan was the first Public Art Master Plan. It was the first time that we did this. It was adopted in 2019. And this is a quote from that plan that gives you kind of sense of the vision of that plan. The town of Truckee believes that public art is an essential component of a thriving community, a livable city, and a world-class destination. The town's vision is to enrich our community through exposure to a high quality and diverse public art experiences. So we have a Town of Truckee, Public Art Commission of Truckee is the formal name. We all refer to them as the PACT from here on out. I want to take a moment to just sort of recognize them. Sorry, I don't have a great photo that shows all the current members. This is an older photo. But I just want to state that this commission, they volunteer their time, they're dedicated, they're knowledgeable, they're passionate, and we're lucky to have all of them. So just a shout out to Chair Troy Corliss, Kelly Cutler, David Mason, Steve Thompson, Molly Moore, who is in the audience tonight, Vice Chair Carol Sesko, and Jennifer Stantiner. So just a little bit of background. When the PACT was first formed, it was formed by a resolution, and in there, one of their duties was to develop a work plan, an annual work plan. And a part of that resolution identified what that work plan should include, and it stated it should include program development activities, opportunity sites for solicited projects, funding for any unsolicited or open proposals, and public art maintenance. The first work plan was adopted or reviewed by the council on September 26, 2023. And when you all reviewed that, you had provided some direction to us and the PAC to really prioritize a long-term funding strategy to sort of figure out how we can long-term fund the program, and then also focus on art installations with a lower priority based on art promotion, outreach, and new programs. So what we have before you tonight is the proposed work plan. We've turned it into a 2-year work plan that coincides with the time frame of the townwide work plan, just for consistency. And it was reviewed actually through a number of meetings by the PACT, but most recently at their March 4th meeting was recommended to get forwarded to you all for a review. It's also a living document, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We want you to think of it as a living document. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Nola to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past and what we're currently working on.
Thank you, Becky. So the work plan, in the work plan, we've highlighted the accomplishments to date the PACT has done. Some of these are really nice art installations. The first project that the PACT completed was the Brockway Road wall art. It's titled Path, and it was done by two local Truckee artists, Daniela Garofolo and Dominic Panzera of Articletica. They installed it in August 2023. It's a pleasure to drive by it. If you haven't walked up to it yet, I encourage everyone to take the time to do that. There's lots of great detail. The PACT also worked on the Donner Lake litter fish sculptures. It's two sculptures that were created from litter pulled out of Donner Lake by Clean Up the Lake. The fish sculptures are titled Weightless, and they were created by Joel Dean Stockdill and Justina Salnikova with Building 180, and that was installed in October 2023. And then also the PACT has worked on completed a public art funding strategy with a consultant. This looked at different funding strategies and was presented to Town Council in September of 2024. Town Council agreed to implement and maintain $100,000 per year with a maximum accrued balance of $500,000. So this $100,000 per year has helped the PAC in planning and doing this work plan for future art installations. Currently, the PACT has one major art installation project that they're working on. It's at the roundabout located at Church Street and Truckee Way. The selected artist is Jake Balcom from Kansas City, Missouri. His proposed art is titled From Rails to Trails. He's under contract and installation is planned for fall of 2025. This slide has a rendering of his proposed artwork. And then the PACT is also working on a temporary art program. We're rolling it out as a pilot project, and the selected location is the Truckee Rail Yard at the Mobility Hub. This site has some space set aside for public art, and it also has a lot of other great possible locations for temporary public art. It's a great way to maybe pull in some younger artists or up-and-coming artists. And we're going to use this program to evaluate, like I mentioned, as a pilot project to evaluate the success, the costs, and potentially refine it some for future growth. There's one other project I'd like to mention. This artwork is not a product of the PACT, but it is artwork that we're planning for at the Delba Yumaway Park, formerly the West River Street Park. The Truckee Donner Land Trust has commissioned two artists, Troy Corliss and Tony Stontiner, to create sculptures. Troy's sculptures is a series of 3 map sails, he's currently calling it, and then Tony Stontiner has a larger piece, and you can see some renderings on this slide. The plan is that Truckee Donner Land Trust will pay for them and then donate this art to be installed at the Delba Yumaway Park. And the great news is we already have foundations in the park, and the artists, once they have them fabricated, are hoping for installation in this summer 2025. And I'll pass it back over to Becky now. Thank you.
Okay, so now on to what's in this proposed work plan. So the work plan has, there's some tables at the back of the work plan that has sort of kind of a wish list of everything that the PACT has kind of come up with that might be implemented, but it's really split up into 3 sections. There's sort of what we think we can get done in the next 2 years, and then there's maybe in the next 5 years, and then everything else is sort of in the bike rack, kind of consistent with the bike rack that we have in our townwide program. So what the plan includes is for the 2-year projects, what we want to do is continue a social media presence, and that really means working with the staff, the town communication program manager, so Braun, we would help identify and create content to continue to post on social media. I think what we found is that every time that we do post something on social media, there seems to be a lot of interest on it, whether it be a survey about art or posting it. One of the things that we might do with our public art inventory that I'll talk about in just a second is we can start promoting some of those different pieces of art throughout town. We will review donation proposals as needed. We have an art donation policy. The PACT is we started working on an update or a refresh for our public art inventory. We have one. The idea with this is to get new photos, update the text so it looks more consistent, update the layout, add some of our town branding, and then update the map and the presentation on our town website just to make it a little easier to read and to find things. And then, as Nola mentioned, in the 2-year work program, it would be finalizing this temporary art pilot project and actually implementing it on the Mobility Hub site, so we can actually get some art on the Mobility Hub site, and then the installation of the Church Street Truckee Way roundabout. And then a couple projects that we would start but might not finish in the the next 2 years is start working on a conservation and maintenance plan, taking a look at all the art inventory we have, try to compile what maintenance plans might look like, and just really a kind of an inventory of our art and what the maintenance for it should look like. So we have sort of an inventory and a long-term plan. And then also initiate our next new permanent installation. We have a determination, the location is yet to be determined. The pact also talked a lot about updating the public art master plan at some point. It was adopted in 2019, so it's over 5 years old now. But as you know, our staff resources are spread a little thin right now, so it's just something to think about as a future project, but not necessarily in the work plan. There's a lot of numbers on this table, but really what this is trying to show is that between what we've already spent on various projects and what we plan to spend on this work plan, on both projects that are underway and future ones, and the $500,000 that we've received in the past. So in the past 3 fiscal years plus the 2 future fiscal years, we would have set aside $500,000 total in funding. So really this table is just to show that at the end of the 2-year work plan, there's still a balance left of $22,600. But we're balancing the amount of work with the amount of funding that we have. We're also trying to balance the amount of work with how much staff time we have, ongoing administration of the projects and the monthly meetings. We estimate it takes about 400 hours of staff time a year. That's for really mostly engineering staff. It's not always Nola and I. We sometimes bring other folks into the mix. So we're trying to maintain that, or that as sort of our cap. What we plan to do is, as opposed to having this plan come back to council every time we want to make an edit, what we're recommending is that as part of the quarterly updates for the townwide work plan, we'll have an item in there so we can provide you updates on what the pact is working on. And if there's something that you want to discuss or question, we could always agendize it. But we weren't planning to. We're thinking of this as sort of a living document. It can the pact will kind of follow the guidelines, but our quarterly updates to the townwide plan would provide you more details as things might change, or give you updates. So those changes we're recommending wouldn't require council approval, but of course, if we had any expenditure over $50,000, we'd be in front of the council again for approval. We did receive one public comment on this item. It was from our chair, Troy Corliss, and he just basically, to summarize, he had recognized the Church Street roundabout art and the temporary art projects that we're working on, identified that kind of long-term goal to update the public art master plan at some point, and then just mentioned that the Nevada County Arts and Cultural Districts are updating a Arts and Cultures Action Plan that should be, I guess, released in May 2025. So that might provide some additional framework for developing regional arts and cultural programming. So with that, that's all I have for you tonight. Our recommendation is to review and accept the work plan, the fiscal year 25-26, 26-27 Public Art Commission of Truckee work plan. And that's what I have for you tonight.
Thank you, Becky. Are there any questions from Councilmember Pahlavi? Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the funding and expenditures, and I'm really excited about the temporary art pilot projects. I think that's a great addition to this program. And I'm wondering where or if you guys have any line items or potential expenditures for the performing arts.
We don't have any specific line items for performing arts. There's a pretty long list of arts that are in the town that the Art Commission, it's in the Public Art Master Plan. And, you know, the same, we've had discussions about performing arts, youth arts, and while it's important and part of the mission of the pact, we've tried to really focus on things that we think that we can accomplish within the 2 years. So the performing arts, aside from the Art Commission being aware of performing arts and sharing information and being out in the community, there's nothing specific for the performing arts in the work plan.
Okay, well, it is then the sharing in the community and including it in your list of potential community resources and public notifications, right? Okay, thank you.
Could you give me a little more detail on the 400 hours a year? I was surprised to see that it's essentially 2.5 months.
Yeah, so
time.
You know, the meetings themselves, writing the staff reports and attending the meetings is probably a quarter to a third of that. But for example, with the Church Street roundabout piece of art, we had to write a request for qualifications, and we got submittals from, I think, 8 or 9 artists. Then we whittled that down to 3 top ones, and we entered into agreements with each of those artists. So creating those agreements takes time to pay them to further define their to refine their concepts. Then we evaluated those 3 with the commission to pick the top one. Then we entered an agreement with that artist, and we're working with working on the foundation design and whether or not there's utility conflict. So it's like these projects, they seem pretty simple, but there's a fair amount of staff time that goes into the implementation of them. So again, the funding strategy, there wasn't a ton of staff time that went into the long-term funding plan, but we hired the consultant. We had weekly, how often did we meet with them? We met with them pretty regularly to provide feedback, so it just sort of adds up over time. But I would say that time is spent across about 4 different staff people in the engineering department.
And then right now, sitting here today, you see that as being what the average amount of time is going to be year over year?
I actually think it might go down a little bit, as there's a little bit of redundancy in terms of getting not redundancy, but we're kind of getting our groove. We've done one RFP. Every time we do one, it gets a little bit easier.
I do think, though, that it's important to point out that it's somewhat scalable after you get into that groove. The more public art the council wants, and the more time you want us to spend.
Right.
Certainly, there's a list of projects that staff can spend time on, and of course, that comes at the expense of other projects.
Right. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item, the Public Arts Commission?
Jeez. I'm Jeannie McCarthy. My husband's Robert McCarthy, and I think this is wonderful what you're doing. But I want to explain something about, you're not mentioning there's mural downtown. It's in the Library of Congress, in the historic, in the Library of Congress, and it's Rob McCarthy's mural. It's the skier and the Franklin car. People are photographing that all the time, and we don't make any money off it, and that's fine. But the beauty of it is historic. And I think you're missing a little bit about historic artwork in this community. That's all I'm going to say. I think you need to readdress what you're doing with some of this art I'm seeing. I mean, ants, flowers, let's think about it. So I'm all for art. And Rob McCarthy is a very talented guy, but does murals. That's what he does. And the mural was paid by the owner of the building where that mural is, John McManus. Then he did one downtown that John McManus owned in the Capitol building. And that thing was outstanding. If anybody saw that Charlie Chapman mural, it was outstanding. But the stucco fell off 2 times. So we couldn't redo it again at that kind of cost to an owner. So it was gorgeous. I hope some maybe saw it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Any follow-up questions to the comments? Okay, I have one. I believe there is an item about doing inventories on the public art that includes a more comprehensive inventory of what we have now. And Ms. McCarthy referred to historical art, if you will, in reference to the mural. Will that be part of this comprehensive inventory?
We have, I think what we're planning to do, so we have actually a form on our website that if people have suggestions for things that should be added to the art inventory that they can fill out. We probably need to push that out as before we update this art inventory because we haven't had a lot of success getting information. But I will actually get Miss McCarthy's information too to make sure that we're
okay.
But yes, we'll push it out on social media, and but we'll also there is if you go to the Public Art Commission portion of the website and you look there, there's a place to put the information in.
Okay, but you're going to talk with Ms. McCarthy.
I will.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. I think we can go to deliberation then. Councilmember Pallavi.
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job. Again, another successful project moving forward, and really appreciate all the volunteers' time and staff time. And yeah, we've reviewed it. I accept the review.
And Vice Mayor.
I echo that. Again, this is another committee that I think is incredibly active and incredibly engaged, and doing really great stuff for our community, and I'm incredibly thankful for their consistent work on this work plan and coming up with great ideas, and I wholeheartedly support it.
And I agree with my colleagues. Now, the outline of the agenda shows that we should have a formal motion on this.
I think that would be great if you can.
Okay. Have a motion?
I'll move that we've reviewed and accept the 25-26, 26-27 Public Art Commission.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. And Noreen. Yes, let's take 5 minutes before we go to our final item on discussion, the development code. Back in session. And now we're moving on to agenda item 7.4. This is the 2024 general plan implementation. Laura Dabe and Chantal Bernberger will take care of it. Ready to go?
Yes, thanks, Mayor.
You bet.
As you mentioned, this is item 7.4, general plan implementation. So as we all know, we were here in February. We received some council direction. That council direction was to remove the residential component requirement from our 2 new zone districts, to remove the requirement for commercial projects to include more than one type of commercial use in both NMU and CMU, a revision to the minimum commercial requirements that we had proposed. So for NMU C, it's going to be 1/2 of the floor area will be commercial. For quarter mixed use, it'll be a quarter. No manufacturing uses were added to NMU. And then we discussed updating the zoning maps to have different zoning for both NMU residential and NMU commercial. And then council directed us to bring this back to have a minimum residential density discussion as we were running out of time at the February meeting. So tonight's timeline, it's going to be a quick one. We're going to talk about minimum residential densities. We'll show you what we did for NMUR and NMUC. We have a little bonus cleanup we added in there that we, while working on a Tahoe Donner project, realized we wanted to make sure everything was consistent with the new general plan. If you have questions, have time for discussion, and then hopefully the council can take action this evening. So for our mixed-use zoning district residential densities, we originally proposed that the densities would follow the general plan density ranges. So for NMU, that's 6 to 8 dwelling units an acre, and for CMU, it's either 6 to 18 or 12 to 24. Then when kind of looking how that played out on the ground, we realized it was worth a discussion with council about maybe taking some other pathways. So the possibilities that we have presented are having no minimum density, using a lower minimum density. The example we're using is 2 dwelling units an acre, which is the current minimum for mixed-use projects, or maintaining that requirement to meet the minimum density range that was established by the general plan. So 3 potential outcomes from these choices. With no minimum density, that's really your maximum flexibility choice. Fewer units may be built than what was assumed when we were talking, when we went over and adopted the 2040 general plan. One item, if council did decide to move in this direction, we could consider increasing workforce housing requirements. Obviously, that would be for a different day, but that's just a thought if minimum density was the choice. 2 dwelling units an acre, that, as I mentioned, is our current minimum standard for mixed use. So currently in our development code, if a commercial project wanted to propose mixed use residential, they would have a choice between 2 and 4 dwelling units an acre. So this wouldn't change the requirements for any property owners, so no additional burden or no kind of change for a property owner in these commercial zone districts. However, we would use the maximum as that maximum set by the general plan, so there would be, we would be getting more units than if the general plan had not gone through and we hadn't changed anything. So either, 8 dwelling units an acre for that maximum or 18 or 24 for CMU. And then using the general plan density ranges could result in additional units. However, it could preclude residential development, and we'll discuss that with these examples we have coming up, but there could be a potential loss of units if the minimum didn't pencil. So since there's not a residential requirement, if somebody came in and didn't want to build up to the minimum density in the general plan, they might just decide not to build any residential units. As we discussed last time, 2 of the examples we used was the Dixon Realty project and grocery outlet. So to reiterate, if we use the density ranges, the Dixon Realty project would have had to build at least 8 dwelling units if they wanted to build 1. So if they triggered any residential. If we use 2 dwelling units per acre, they would be required to build at least 1 dwelling unit, but this would be under the understanding that they wanted to build a dwelling unit, so we would get what they had proposed. And if there was no minimum density, they could build it as is with no dwelling units or up to 16 units as the maximum. For grocery outlet, if we use the density ranges in the general plan, they would have been required to build at least 18 dwelling units. The existing project includes 3 workforce units currently. If we use the 2 dwelling units per acre, they would have to build at least 3, or no minimum density, it would be as it currently exists, or up to 37 dwelling units. If the council decides to go with a minimum density, staff is proposing a few exceptions. The site constraints and the detriment to public health are already in our development code for ways to lessen density. So if there are slopes or environmental factors that would preclude somebody building out to their minimum density, staff could take a look at that. The review authority could decide if a minimum density exception would be required. There's a detriment to public health, safety, or welfare. And then we just wanted to highlight that the provision of workforce housing would not trigger the minimum density. We want to incentivize people to, or developers to build that workforce housing on site. So we wouldn't want to say, if you build your workforce housing, now you need to build 8 additional units. So those were our ideas for minimum density exceptions, and I'll turn it over to Laura.
Okay, so our next topic is neighborhood mixed use. So these are where the areas at Donner Lake are that would be affected by this. That includes some residential and some commercial parcels. Based on public comment we received through some earlier rounds of these discussions and some of our review of these parcels, we came up with some ideas to allow some additional flexibility for the residential parcels. So this is what the zoning would look like. We would have the NMUC, which would be for the existing commercial parcels in pink. Those would need to meet the new requirements for the NMU zoning district. The NMUR would be the residential parcels. Those are the yellow and brown ones. They would have a choice of either continuing as their current residential uses, or they could choose to move to mixed use under the NMUC standards. And then we included some no net loss provisions so that we would ensure that we're not losing any residential units if those properties redevelop. As Chantal mentioned earlier, we realized that we needed to do a cleanup for the Tahoe Donner standards when we changed the minimum and maximum density standards in the development code to match the ranges. We weren't thinking at the time that Tahoe Donner was not included any of the changes that were made through the general plan. So basically what we're proposing is just to keep our existing way of calculating that just for Tahoe Donner. And then there are some other items that the council didn't have any comments on at the last meeting. Those are the development code cleanups, the other zoning map amendments, and some general plan cleanup amendments. So our actions tonight would be the development code amendments that would be creating the new mixed-use zoning districts for CMU and NMU, and the cleanup amendments, the zoning map amendments that are proposed to ensure consistency with the general plan land use designations, and the general plan cleanup amendments for the land use diagram and noise contours. In December, the Planning Commission made a recommendation that they forwarded to the council. So this is our recommendation for you tonight, which would be introducing ordinance 2025-02. That would be to adopt the general plan implementation for the development code amendments, the zoning district names and abbreviations, and the amendments to the zoning maps. Adopt resolution 2025-10, which would be the general plan land use diagram and roadway noise contours diagram cleanups, and determine the amendments exempt from CEQA. So that's the end of our presentation. We're happy to take any questions you have.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Sure. When we're talking about the minimum density question that you have in front of us, is it for the zoning district as a whole, or are we talking about if they were just a residential application?
It would be any project that proposes a residential unit.
Any project that proposes a residential
Well, there's
unit.
no residential requirement at this time, so
Right.
So yes, if you came in and wanted to build 1 unit, then how would that be handled? Would you have to go to your minimum density? Could you just build the 1 unit, or should you have to at least meet the 2 dwelling units an acre, which is our current standard?
And if it was just a commercial project or a mixed-use non-residential project, it's already not having to comply with, or at least whatever we layer on top isn't going to govern that particular project.
According to the direction from the last meeting, correct?
Okay, that's what I thought. So just making sure we were still working on this. Okay, I think that was all my questions. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Can you reiterate what you just clarified? I think you confused me. What you,
Want me to do it or you want them to do it?
either way.
Why
Do
don't
you
you
want
guys
Staff,
do it?
yes.
So in the February meeting,
I'm like, wait, what?
in the February meeting, the council directed no residential requirement. Of course, we want residential and if it comes in. So then the next question is, when residential is proposed, how are we handling the residential densities? Are we using the general plan ranges, which, you know, the example was 37 units or 18 units at Grocery Outlet if that had been built? Should we say maximum flexibility, which we heard sometimes from council in February? There was, you know, flexibility wasn't a word being used. Or should we make sure that should we keep what we have right now, which would be 2 dwelling units an acre as a minimum density? If that was concise enough.
Yeah, I understood that part. I guess what I was trying to make sure is what we had previously directed is where I was confused.
What I think we previously directed, and just jump on in if you guys want to say if I have something wrong. So if it's a standalone commercial project or mixed use non-residential project, then there is not a minimum residential density. And we had already decided that. So what they're trying to get us to clarify, I believe, is the last piece, which is, for example, if there was an acre parcel and you had a commercial property coming in, I'm just going to maybe try to frame it in real world as an example, and definitely like correct me or stop me. But, you know, one reason why I think the maximum flexibility is important, but commercial project, they have an employee housing requirement, right? And so that would still be a requirement of the project, depending on the size of said project.
And they're recommending that we exempt workforce housing from minimum densities.
Right. And I guess, and I'm slightly going into deliberation, but the real world example would be, well, if you have a commercial project, they're already doing employee housing, and they maybe have space for one more residential unit. For example, if we go with this 2 dwelling unit per acre minimum, then we're sort of forcing another residential unit, which we may or may not want to do. And that's what you're basically asking us. But we are increasing, we would be enabling that requirement. That's all.
All right. Thank you.
You can tell where I'm going, but I think that's sort of like, to me, that's like the limiting factor, right, on an acre parcel.
Thank you. Now, I don't have additional questions unless you have. I think the only other thing that I'm curious about is you gave us 2 examples. And it just feels like there's a lot of different potential circumstances here that that's my, we're getting into deliberation. That's my concern, is that I'm not seeing all the possible considerations. So if you have any other examples to give in terms of how these different calculations would pan out on those projects, that would be very helpful.
We did look at a lot of different properties and we did the calculations. One I know that we looked at was high altitude. It's a pretty big parcel. A lot of it's very steep. So I think the number of units they would be required to build was like 80 or something like that. It was a lot because of the size of the parcel. Granted, we have that exception that we're proposing to, have site constraints, those areas be excluded, but it would be a lot.
I think one of the main, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish that thought, because I'm going on to a different thought.
Well, I think just to maybe like put it a little bit more in a box, I think what staff heard from us during the general plan process was one thing, was, increased densities in these corridors, and requiring higher mixed use. And when the rubber hit the road and they started to go forward with implementation, some confusion arose and some potential conflicts and some questions from staff saying, hey, is this really what you want to do? Did you want to do it to that extent, or did you want it to go to this extent? And I think that there's just been some, just some review of what was that intent at the end of the day. And now, very similar to some of this other stuff, we're just kind of getting into the nitty gritty of like, what does it actually look like on the ground? And so I think your question for what does it look like on the ground, goes a little bit to what you envisioned in the general plan process with now understanding, okay, well, yeah, that was the general plan process. That was community wide. Now we're trying to really see like, okay, well, how's something going to happen?
At a specific area.
Exactly. And what are some of the results of what that's going to look like depending on the policy that's put in place. So that's, in a nutshell, what you're trying to accomplish?
And I think like the grocery outlet example, I think is one of the ones where we really went, oh, okay. So if this had developed under the new general plan and they did 3 workforce units, but say they had wanted to do 1 more or 2 more market rate units, we'd welcome additional units. But if they were forced to do 18 more units, I think we would lose those 2 units.
And
so
what
that's
did
the
that
kind of
space allow it and lend itself to at the end of the day? Because we got the 3 affordable units. Did we get addition? We got 1. It was just the 3 affordable units, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Then moving on to a different kind of category, how does this affect our RENA numbers?
I think our understanding is that it wouldn't, because the ability to build those units, we're not removing the ability to build those units. They can go to their maximum amount of units to be built. We're just not, we're not saying that you can't build units unless you meet a certain density.
Okay. We're not saying that they have to. We're also not saying that they don't have to. And so those still count as potential RENA units. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, my understanding had been that the workforce housing requirement remains. What this change means is that a developer could choose to put the workforce housing with the commercial development, or he could choose to put it somewhere else.
We would prefer usually you want it on site.
And if it were on-
that can happen now.
Right.
Right now it could be a choice. We don't want to incentivize them to put it off site by creating a requirement.
The narrow question is, we still have the workforce housing requirement. We're not creating an exemption for that. And I'm happy anytime to remove the commercial 25% minimum requirement. Along those lines, do we run into any problems with HDC if we have one of our RENA parcels subject to the commercial minimum requirement? Places that are zoned for more than 18 units an acre, but we're imposing a 25% commercial component.
And Andy might want to jump in on this, but I think when we've talked about this before, if there's still the potential for them to meet the density, if the commercial isn't precluding them from building to the residential density, then I think we've said that's okay.
Okay, that's staff's understanding?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Council. Just briefly, in preparing for the meeting, since submitting the questions, I was looking at the provision on the corridor mixed-use district under section 18.4.020 on the corridor mixed use, and it still has a sentence in there in the middle of that long paragraph saying mixed use is required. Do you need to change that now that we're allowing pure commercial? A single pure
Yeah,
commercial?
we probably just overlooked that when
Yeah.
we're making the edits.
Do you see where that is? It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down in the middle of the
I will
line.
make a note and we'll
Yeah.
get that cleaned up.
Okay, and then along those lines, it says the FAR maximum floor area ratio is 1.0, but the general plan adds in 0.25 for community benefit. Does that need to be in here, or is it addressed anywhere?
I
in the
believe
new-
that's for the town density. That can increase for the town density bonus program when that's developed.
In the corridor mixed use.
Right, so we didn't include it in this because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist yet, but once the new town density bonus program is fully vetted, then we can put that in there.
Oh, the 0.25 depends on the town's density bonus program?
Well, we have to have a program to implement it, so we don't have that yet. So even though it's listed in there as an option in the general plan, we have to have the program that goes with it.
I understand.
So we can't amend the code just yet.
I see that. Thank you. And then is the same thing true then where we say mixed-use project is, no, it's not. It also says a mixed-use project is 12 to 24 dwelling units per acre in the corridor mixed use, but we also have that portion on the north side of the road between Freights and the village nursery. Does that need to go in there, or was that a deliberate omission?
That was probably just overlooked. We can take a
Okay,
look at that
so it's
too.
just two things then. The mixed use is required, taking that out, and then adding in the density range for the north side.
Okay, got it.
Just bear with me. Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. And now do we have any public comment? Ms. McCarthy.
Jack, come on up. God, people are all tall. I'm Jeannie McCarthy. I've returned again.
Okay.
I have 13406 Donner Pass Road. It is zoned NMU. I live at Donner Lake. I'm going to read this. McCarthy's property use of a non-conforming property itself is not considered a zoning violation, as the property non-conforming status is legal established and complies with the zoning use regulations applicable at the time of the creation in 1963. Our building was built by Rex Reed with a permit for the workshop, 7/10/1963, and that seems to be the problem in the workshop. It does have a permit. All it says on the permit is addition of 1,896 square feet. The workshop's 1,496. The office is 400, and there's no other addition on our building. We have a two-story building with a workshop and office. So this is the permit saying this workshop was permitted by the owner, original owner, 7/10/1963. He built furniture in that workshop, and he lived in the building. And then Robert McCarthy is your second owner. He has McCarthy Sign Company in the workshop, and we live in the building. We have not changed the zone use in any way since Rex Reed or the McCarthys have owned it for 63 years. It's the same. So it's neighborhood mixed use, and we have no active code compliance action against us on this property for existing use. But Rob McCarthy has been told that his workshop's not legal, but it is legal because it's been permitted. I sent all of you the permits for my property. Did you get them, I hope? Every one of you. I sent everything on my property. And all about the property, how it was built. It's built on this way. It's on a triangle. God only knows why this guy did what he did. You can't measure this building accurately because the walls go out east and west. Think about it. We've had this place re-measured 4 or 5 times, and everyone comes up with new measurements. It doesn't really matter because we're trying to clarify the workshop office that is permitted. The building was not permitted. It was built in 1956. He didn't have to get a permit back then. Then he built the building, the second story, in 1963, and he built it on top of our first floor. There's a roof underneath my apartment. And it's very challenging to get in there and work in this building because there's a roof there, if you know what I mean. The crawl space is like nil. So anyway, I'd appreciate you guys re-looking at our property. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I'm Jack Guzman. property owner on 12105 Donner Pass Road. And I think our mixed use designation change from our highway commercial was going to have a negative impact on our business. If 12105 Donner Pass Road is the westbound Shell station, just past the schools. We are the only westbound location from the Nevada state line to Colfax. If we're impeded by the change in designation to go to mixed use, that may impede the growth of and the opportunity to grow our business, which, like I say, is a family-owned business. We've been on that site since 1962. The other site across the freeway adjacent to us has kept their status. They're corporation-owned, so their revenues leave the community. Ours, we have elected to reinvest in the community, and we just finished another capitalization over in Pioneer, which will encompass probably another 10 employees. One of our other adjacent properties that we've elected and over the years invested in, Truckee, incorporates 40 to 50 employees along with the owners. So I would like to keep and solicit you folks that we keep that site designation so that we have the latitude to meet the customer's needs and our basic business needs under the current zoning that we have right now. And I'd like your consideration moving in that direction. Like I say, the designation across the street, those are all corporates, and they don't reinvest in our community like we have as a family. And I'm very fortunate that we have had generations. I have my daughter and all my grandchildren, and hopefully our great-grandchildren will be able to stay in this community, because if we change these patterns where we're going and not provide opportunities for our population, our children that are graduating from school, to be able to find jobs that can support themselves and be vested in this community, we're going to not have a community. And I thank you for your time. Hopefully you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman.
Good evening. My name is Dylan Crosby. I'm a VP for Tahoe Forest Health System. First, I'd just like to express our appreciation. I know this has been a long process coming, and I know there's a ton of staff time. Planning Commission took a ton of time, as well as council, so I appreciate all the effort that has gone into these changes. In addition to that, I think there's been some great changes, specifically for the hospital as it relates to our ability to complete some of our seismic regulations that are required by the state. In addition to that, I still am seeking a little bit of some additional clarification on these mixed use components, specifically in commercial mixed use. Mayor Zabriskie, I think you, during the questions period, answered some of my questions, but last February, we heard that mixed use wasn't going to be required in CMU, at least in my opinion or our opinion. The code doesn't read that way yet with just a couple language topics, and we just want to ensure we're going that direction, as well as advocate for no required residential density, obviously over and above what's required in the workforce housing. So we want to advocate for that no required mixed use within CMU or specifically for medical services, and no required residential density. The last thing, and maybe a new one, is I asked the council to look at the definition of student and employee housing. This is a designation and a definition derived from the public facility, the public facilities zoning designation. I asked the council to consider revising that for more inclusivity and letting that be applicable across the various PF zoning districts that we have across town. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Given the time, and this is our last item, we can allow another comment. You'll keep it short?
Can you
Mike?
put your mic on, please? Yeah, thank you.
So on now? Okay. Jack Guzman, representing my property, family property at 12105 Donner Pass Road. I neglected to inform all the participants here on how much our business site donates to this town in taxable revenue. This year I looked it up, and this year it was $79,000. With our taxable increase, we projected out next year it'll be $148,000 if our business model stays the same. So if we're impacted from the standpoint of not being able to do future growth, and we have to change that and go to a mixed-use type, we'd never be able to generate the revenues back to this community that we have. And so if I do a mixed use, there's no way we'll get that type of taxable income for this community. And that's all I want to say is that with that being said, hopefully you consider that because we'd like to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman. I didn't mean to open the door. I see that was a mistake. You have 1 minute. It starts now.
I know that recently on March 8th, everyone heard about, there was a couple hit on Donner Lake walking down the bike path. Now you're trying to sell us on that Donner Lake is pedestrian friendly, no sidewalks, no bike path. Now they're on the bike path and one's dead. So all I'm asking you, quit sending more traffic our way, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
That
McCarthy.
one person dead's enough. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that's all the public comments, and now we'll move on. Well, are there any follow-up questions to any of the public comments? Councilmember Pallavi.
I have a quick question. Steph, Mr. Guzman's property is which one? In the highway commercial?
I would have to look it up. Was it the it's the Shell gas station? Okay.
On Highway 89 South?
No.
Like Deer,
End.
right before
Donner Pass
Deerfield.
Road. On the westbound side. Got it. On Donner Pass Road. Yeah. Okay.
So not highway commercial.
Not highway.
So just general commercial. Or
That was just-
formerly general commercial.
That was general commercial.
It currently would be CMU.
Yeah. And I just have maybe a question for him, or if just for the record. Has he attended any of the planning commission meetings to bring this up? Is this the first time we're sort of hearing about this from anybody's public comment recognition? This is our sixth hearing on this issue.
He's had a couple conversations with Yumi
Okay.
about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No further.
Quick question.
Vice Mayor Klostad.
Yeah. I thought I was trying to go back and find it, but I can't. I thought the limitations were if you were adding 50% or more square footage to your site, then it triggers meeting this requirement. Is that the case on this property that we're discussing?
So we took out that because the council didn't want to have a requirement to do the residential or do more than one type of commercial use.
That's why I can't find it.
So we took that out.
Okay, so what is the trigger?
So there isn't
anything.
a trigger. You can do a single-use commercial project in CMU now.
Okay.
Based on your latest direction.
Yeah, I'm not sure that. I think that the allowed uses on that property are remaining the same as.
So I'm not understanding the impact.
Well, gas
then.
station, not being that gas stations are already removed, but an additional commercial use would, the uses that are currently allowed in CG are.
That's some of the concern
currently-
as I understood it when I had a conversation actually here with Mr. Guzman about you wouldn't be able to add more gas pumps, and that's because that's the general plan policy
Yeah,
for no more
that's
gas
different.
stations. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what the conversation focused on. But
Okay.
we did talk about if you wanted to add more commercial, then it would just be subject to the new standards.
Okay, great. Yeah, and the no more new pumps, that was done quite a while ago. This is just about commercial space, or whether or not there would be a residential minimum density, which we're going to get into now.
That spot would now, under the general plan and potentially the development code changes, would be able to add more residential than would be allowed right now in general commercial. So that's kind of, I would say, the biggest change that we're looking at as it appears.
Basically allowing more flexibility than exists now, not reducing that flexibility. Thank you.
On the same topic, so we've removed the requirement for mixed use for commercial operations. So that change means he's not affected by any mixed use requirement. What affects his future development is we've now removed gas stations as an acceptable use. And that goes back to the ban on new gas stations. Okay, what confuses me is this is an existing gas station, so we're saying he can't expand an existing gas station.
Because it's legal non-conforming at that point. So it's similar to like if you have a drive-through, you can keep your drive-through, but you can't expand your drive-through. So it's a similar situation. He can keep the number of pumps that he has, but he can't add more.
Is that the way the development code reads on the gas station ban or the general plan?
The general plan. That's how you apply it.
But that's not what it explicitly says.
That's just the basic rule of interpretation for a non-conforming use. Anything that's non-conforming cannot be expanded.
But what we did was ban new gas stations.
Which makes this one a legal non-conforming use. So like any legal non-conforming use, it cannot be expanded upon.
Okay, I am missing a step there because we didn't say it was going to be a non-conforming use. We didn't say a particular zone. We're going to remove that land use. We said we're going to allow existing uses to continue.
As legal non-conforming uses.
That's the part I didn't hear. And that's not explicit in the general plan or any ordinance, or is it?
I believe we removed the use of gas station from all zone districts after the ban on gas stations through development code amendments, so it is no longer
Did
allowed.
we address expansion of new gas stations? Was that in the council discussion at all?
I don't think that was part of the discussion.
I think we did talk about it, but we'd have to go back and pull up the minutes from it. But I do remember us, because we talked about it also with mini storage. It was a similar situation that we have existing mini storage,
Right.
and they wouldn't be able to expand. So it's the same. It's mini storage, drive-throughs, and gas stations all have the same application. And golf courses. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, either I've forgotten that or we didn't talk about it.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I'm asking whether we talked about it.
It sounds like we may have a few
I'm
years
pretty
ago.
sure we talked about it.
We'd,
Yeah.
we'd have to. I don't think we're going to be able to answer
Right.
that tonight. We'd
That's
have to go back and look it up.
Okay, thank you. And then on the points that Ms. McCarthy brought up when she stood up the first time, you've already had these discussions with her, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Are we ready to move into deliberation? Okay. So the main point on deliberation is whether we're going to have minimum residential requirements, density requirements, if a builder, project developer is going to have any residential at all. And it's specifically in regard to these commercial developments. If he wants to put in one residential unit, is he going to have to meet the minimum requirement?
And if he or she or they are going
Did I
to
do it
build
again? Yeah.
3 employee housing units plus 1 market rate unit, are you going to make them build a second? Yeah. So
Apply to any kind of residential.
Any kind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Across
mean,
the
I'm
board.
just going to continue with my theme. I will start us off. When I see the words maximum flexibility coming from our planning department, I applaud them. I think that's important. I think it's I think it's the right recognition. I think it's the right way to go for these zoning districts that we are truly trying to invigorate, amend, redevelop, whatever you want to call it, that allowing for the maximum flexibility will allow that zoning district to develop in my opinion, the healthiest and most capital friendly way. And in general, that's what I'm going to still push for. I think adopting 2 units is, we didn't ask this question. We always ask the same question. How'd you come up with 2 units? Right? I mean, I'm guessing we're going to have the same answer. Oh, we got 2 units. It's already in there. Let's keep it at 2. So to me, there's no basis for a number. And the terms maximum flexibility will always ring true for me in many of our land use conversations. And this is such a minor one that I think imposing random number of units for residential is just not the way to go. I think I don't get it.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying you're in favor of no minimum density requirement.
That is correct, Mayor.
And it's
Minimum residential density requirement on a non-commercial project.
Could you just throw up the slide? You had the 3 options, and then we'll go to Councilmember Klofstad.
I think it's really clear that the general plan density ranges were a reach. And I think, but having those as a potential, because we do have some developers that do want to do pure residential in this area. So I think that's great, but demanding it clearly is not what we going to achieve what we want. I'm uncomfortable. Basically we have this 2 units, dwelling units per acre. And what you're talking about is not even having that requirement. I don't know. I need convincing of that. It seems to me that we don't want to back completely away from our dwelling unit requirement. I like the exceptions that staff came up with, particularly that if it's going to build a single workforce housing unit, it's not going to trigger the 2nd unit or 3rd or 4th or whatever. Exceptions for site constraints. But I think in that corridor, if it is going to be a housing project, I think if we don't have any, then we're going to get some projects that we're not going to be happy with. I'm worried about. And then we have no power, no negotiation, no opportunity for navigating this further.
I'm in favor of having minimum density on standalone residential projects only.
Okay. That was not clear to me.
Sorry.
My goodness, this is confusing. Okay, great. Then we're just talking about mixed use. So they can still do a standalone commercial, they could do a standalone residential, and the 2 units per acre on the standalone residential would apply.
We did not want to take away a minimum density from standalone residential.
Great. That's what makes me really uncomfortable.
Because that was really the idea of the zoning districts and our residential zoning districts. So yes, this is just for these commercial mixed use and neighborhood mixed use, residential mixed use. Let's get confusing projects.
Okay. Thank you. I can get behind that. That makes me much more comfortable now.
Except we're not
What are you
going to.
getting behind?
That we don't have a minimum density on standalone commercial or mixed use, but we do for standalone residential.
Correct. Then you and I are in agreement.
Great.
Great. Well, I'm in agreement that we could have standalone residential. So I guess we have 2 votes on that.
You
have to keep.
Yeah. Right now, we're not allowing standalone residential.
We have, so with the NMUR districts, you can do standalone residential. That's the residential zone districts. You can do standalone multifamily there.
Right.
And then there's all of our other residential zoning districts that we're not talking about today, but we are changing, we have changed them to meet they're part of the development code cleanups. We have changed them for the ranges. And those have to meet, that's minimum density as well.
I'm sorry, I was talking about corridor mixed use. We are not allowing residential.
Right, in the corridor mixed use,
Yeah.
but in the,
Oh, you were talking about neighborhood.
I thought that's one of the things that they were asking us to define.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. I mean, with what I'm left with.
So no minimum density for the,
No minimum density for a developer, a commercial developer that wants to put in a residential unit. He has no density requirement.
do we want to put on the recommend?
Exactly. When I say he, I mean it in a pan-gender way.
So we do have the recommendations up here. If I think staff has everything we need, and you can move into looking for a motion.
So this is everything we've discussed and the last 3 meetings all now being adopted at once with all of our changes reflected, and only Mayor Zabriskie will copy edit you in the next couple of weeks for any further clarifications. Okay. That has to be number 4. Mayor Zabriskie's required copy editing.
Listen, I want to thank staff.
I want to thank you.
This has been a long, long haul, and I thought staff did an exceptional job of summing things up for this proceeding.
And without
capturing what
I'm
we did
also
before.
genuinely, without your level of detail, those things would go overlooked. And I mean, we all
And then we'd
appreciate
have
it.
another
And we'd have to do
development
this
code
again.
amendment.
So you're preventing a 4th hearing. So that's why we appreciate this.
Pounding the gavel.
I'm going to introduce ordinance 2025-0. Do I have to read these in full, Andy, or can I summarize?
You could summarize a little bit, but
You want me to read them?
Yeah, ideally.
I'm going to introduce ordinance 2025-02, adopting amendments in support of 2040 general plan implementation to the Truckee Municipal Code, Title 18, Development Code for Mixed-Use Zoning Districts, cleanup amendments, amendments to zoning district names and abbreviations, and amendments to the Town of Truckee zoning maps. Adopt Resolution 2025-10, adopting general plan land use diagram, LU-2, and roadway noise contours diagram, cleanup amendments, and determining them all to be exempt from CEQA.
I'll second.
All those do we need to do roll call on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. That brings us to council reports. Councilmember Pallavi.
I think just a visit Truckee Tahoe meeting for me. I was going to pull up our agenda. We are adding a board member potentially in the next couple of months, but they started attending some of our meetings. So an independent short-term renter, which we haven't had in a number of years. That seat has been vacant, so that is a great thing. And that's about it. Everything else in my world running smoothly. Nothing else to update.
Okay. Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Yeah, I had several conversations this past week about the library, very informative. And then I spent the weekend before this at the Civic Well Policymakers Conference. It was an extraordinary conference this year. Just a lot of, well, actually, I should say probably the first half a day it was just a group therapy session, and but we really moved into actions and momentum. And Councilmember Henderson, I think, got how many more agencies on board with our resolutions?
There's over 30 that were considering it. We're still waiting to hear back from some.
Yeah, so we were in a room with another 120 or so elected officials, and it was quite the buzz. People were very excited about what we were doing, and on both. The fire one was particularly interesting and engaging to most people, but the economic impact one was really important to some other communities that are going to be gravely impacted by the cut. So really extraordinary, and I hope a few of my fellow council members can join me next year.
Thank you. I was interviewed for a Moonshine Inc. article on homelessness that I guess will be published on April 10th. Melissa Sigg is doing the article. Attended Good Morning Truckee, which was on wildlife. The Sierra red fox is coming back. Snowshoe hare's coming back. Bears are at 3 to 4 times their numbers of only 6 or 7 years ago in the Tahoe Basin. The elk are moving south in the Sierra Valley. 2 were spotted down near Boca. 2 young bulls, as it were spotted down there. Oh, and the rattlesnakes are coming over the top of the mountain and up the hill from both directions. That was the message from Good Morning Truckee. And then attended the Nevada County Transportation Commission meeting. Part of it focused on the induced demand strategy, which is essentially working on getting the state to change a statewide policy that considers adding lanes to highways as inducing more use, and essentially in rural areas, the premises, the assumptions are different. The factual assumptions you have to make are different. And so our commission, our executive director is spreading the word among the rural counties. Attended the soup night at the Sierra Community House at the high school. Jen and I were on a panel that judged high school students at the Tahoe Expedition Academy. They were all proposing, there was about 6, I guess, proposing different forms of legislation. One was to lower the drinking age, one was to raise the voting age. The one to raise the voting age is because our brains are not fully formed, and I guess that's true. And then there was an economic vitality meeting last night where the main thing we discussed is what we brought up in the agenda item earlier, is about these mini catalyst groups where volunteers are being assigned to help different property owners on West and East River Street. That's it. So what we can do now is we're going to adjourn to closed session, where we are going to engage in a conference on real property negotiations. The parcel number is 80-020-03-000, and it's negotiating price and terms under Government Code Section 54956.8. Does anyone have any public comments on that closed session item? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned to closed session.